I hear a baby crying. No, not a baby. Sirens. Fire trucks. Guess I've been standing here for a while. Firemen take forever to show up. Traffic gets in their way. Dust. Dust is thick. Could choke on it. There's nothing left. So you know. So that's why. I never would have connected it to you. Nothing about it said gangster until this. It was a nice piece of work, Kingpin. You shouldn't have signed it. Well, I got nothing more else to say aside from that. Let's get to the video. Hello everyone, Britton here, also known as Smoky Dude, and I am back with another video as a part of Daredevil Week, where I talk about all things Daredevil since the new show Daredevil Born Again is coming out. Got my Daredevil shirt on. I got my Daredevil book I'm going to cover today, and the comic I'm covering today is, of course, the namesake for the TV show, and that is Daredevil Born Again by Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli, one of the great creative teams in comics. And I have the very recent Marvel Premiere collection that they just put out, which has a lot of really cool stuff, such as a foreword by Charlie Cox, aka the best Daredevil actor who ever lived, and of course an introduction by Frank Miller himself. But yes, I'm going to be covering Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli's Daredevil Born Again, which is one of their great collaborations aside from Batman Year One. So let's get into it. I pick on Frank Miller a lot, mainly because people give him the lion's share of the credit for revitalizing Batman in the modern age with stuff like Dark Knight Returns and Batman Year One, which is my favorite of his work nonetheless, but let's move on. When great as they are, I think people such as Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams, who both mentored Miller, ironically enough, deserve just as much, if not more of the credit, since I feel they did far more substantive work on The Dark Knight. And there are other people I could definitely mention, like Doug Minch or Jem Starlin, but Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams are definitely the two guys who really pop to my mind when it comes to who really helped revitalize Batman before Frank Miller showed up on the scene. There's also his ugly, unpleasant art style, but I'm digressing enough already, and I'm here to celebrate one of his better works today, and not bash the stuff that I find problematic about Frank Miller's work. I really would like to sit here today and celebrate Daredevil Born Again. And if there is a character that Frank deserves all the credit in the world for revitalizing, it is Daredevil, without a doubt. I mean, he took a gimmicky kind of Spider-Man ripoff, who was kind of this gimmicky swashbuckler, but Frank ended up taking him and turned him into Marvel's version of Batman, a pulp detective hero, as Frank Miller would put it. But for most people, and myself, Daredevil Born Again is the apotheosis of Frank's time on The Man Without Fear, and if there is one thing you can count on Frank for, it is for being in tip-top shape when writing Daredevil. I mean, you put Frank Miller on Daredevil, I will show you some greatness. And alongside Batman Year One, I think Daredevil Born Again is one of Frank's most polished stories. And I'm not just saying that because it's the same creative team as Batman Year One, though that definitely helps a lot. It doesn't nearly have the amount of goofy stuff that can pop up in his work, like over-the-top action, prostitutes, Navy SEALs, all that stupid stuff that often shows up in his work. And his focus in the story is clear. I suppose that Frank is like Grant Morrison or Donny Cates in that way, where he writes really well when he has a good editor who can rein him in and tell him no. One of the biggest strengths of Daredevil Born Again, though, and the thing that Frank Miller really understands so keenly about the character of Matt Murdock, is this is a guy who will never give up. You could destroy his life, kill the ones he loves, torture him emotionally in any way possible, and he'll just keep coming back, somehow even stronger than before. But it's this perseverance that really keeps him from breaking completely and gives much of the story its power, as Matt goes through a journey of death and rebirth as he comes back a even stronger hero than he was before. Matt's life and existence is completely and ruthlessly stripped from him, but despite all of that, Matt keeps coming back. It's here where his nemesis, the Kingpin, of course, who I mentioned at the beginning of this video, makes his fatal miscalculation. Once you take everything from a man that he cares about, you'll make him into somebody who has nothing left to lose. And a man like that is extremely dangerous. Much like Year One, I feel like Miller paces this tale in Daredevil Born Again magnificently well. Now, he does indulge in the noirish purple prose that he's known for, but he never really lets it get in the way of the story, much like in Year One, where I find he has a very similar strength there. But I think one of his gifts, like his contemporary Alan Moore at the time, is that he is able to make this world of gods and superheroes feel real. Grounded is likely a better term. And Miller gives a tangibility to this world that you see in stuff, which, with the help of David Mazzucchelli, of course, stuff like this, or there's a really great scene where Daredevil is just lying in some trash. He's been broken so thoroughly that, scenes like that, like where he's just completely broken, and it's really good. It really gives a sense of tangibility to the Marvel universe. And he ends up giving this tangibility to this world by penning a deep and sometimes very moving story about faith, rebirth, and ultimately, redemption. The other great feature of this comic, which I alluded to earlier, is the stunning artwork from Frank Miller's Year One collaborator, David Mazzucchelli, and he never touched another superhero comic again after doing this in Year One, and we are the poorer for it because Mazzucchelli provides some of the finest artwork of his career. Unlike the gothic noir and the grandeur of Batman Year One, Mazzucchelli makes New York this very grungy, you could just look at that right there. It's very grungy, much grungier, much dirtier place. There are just very intense sequences here where he really makes his characters come to life. And there are differences from this one and I really love the line work here, especially with the colors. I really love old comic book colors, which I know that's not really David Mazzucchelli. I know that, oh God, who did the colors on Daredevil Born Again? Might have been Richmond Lewis, but I have no idea. Or, there's some other great artwork right there where he's in the alleyway and he's just lying down in trash. Now, I have said before, there are artists who can perfectly complement a writer's sensibilities, and I would say that Mazzucchelli is that fortunate man for Frank Miller. Again, he also illustrates some of the finest action sequences ever put in a comic. My God, especially when, look at that, just absolutely incredible, action sequences. Might even dare say that he exceeded Year One in that regard, which I know that might be even blasphemous to say, and it's crazy that I'm even saying such heresy. But great as a story as this is, and another fantastic collaboration between Miller and Mazzucchelli, I still prefer Batman Year One, as Born Again is hindered by one fatal flaw. The climax, for one, is overblown as all hell, especially when Nuke shows up, who's this absolutely deranged nut job who loves America. I actually showed him earlier, but I'll show you what he looks like for, there he is. He's right there. There he is, right there. And I'll show you a clearer photo of him, or not photo, illustration of him. There he is. Here's a better one where he's fighting off some government people who are trying to figure out what the hell's going on with him. But especially when he shows up, it really becomes this kind of overblown, over-the-top thing, which is very much unlike the brilliant and very intense and thrilling climax of Batman Year One. But still feels very, very grounded. I thought was even more pulse-pumping than Daredevil Born Again. Because in Daredevil Born Again, when Nuke shows up, he kind of just blows up New York City, Hell's Kitchen. The Avengers show up, and it just becomes a huge... It becomes kind of messy towards the climax of this book, which is the only thing that really hinders this from being a 5-star absolute masterpiece of a story. And I find that the climax of this story in particular betrays the more grounded tone and storytelling that this series is going for. it is unfortunate, but it is unfortunate because the actual ending is beautiful. I think it is a very fitting end to the story. I think it is kind of the ending that really sets this really kind of Frank's last word on Daredevil. Well, before he did The Man Without Fear, which is also a comic I recommend. And I mean, it's unfortunate. The actual ending is really, really good, but it's there to stay, and that's not going anywhere anytime soon. But that's not to say it's all bad. There are some really good parts, especially when Captain America shows up. I mean, my God, Frank just shows up and gives one of the greatest Captain America moments in the history of comics. And I mean, in a single scene, Frank encapsulates who Captain America is as a character and gives him one of his best lines. Let me just find it real quick. Let me see if I can find it. Oh my God, this is just... Come on, where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Right there. There it is. All its glory. There. Right there. One of the greatest lines Captain America has ever said. And it's blurry. You guys can't see what it says. But it literally says, "I'm loyal to nothing, General, except the dream." That was fantastic, and made me wish that a prime Frank Miller had been given a shot to do Captain America, but would I have liked it? I think so. If it were prime Frank Miller, I think I would have liked it. But in the scene, I find that Frank really encapsulates who Captain America is as a character and gives him one of the best lines he's ever said in his career, which is saying a lot, because Captain America has gone through a lot in his career, and this is a Daredevil story. This isn't even a Captain America story, so... Good job, Frank. Despite the shortcomings of this one and the fact that it doesn't reach the heights of Year One entirely, it does sometimes go there, but it's not quite to the standard of Year One. I think Year One is just better overall as a story. I still find Daredevil Born Again to be one of Frank's best outings as a writer, as well as one of Daredevil's best outings as a character. I probably shouldn't have said that in context of the Bendis run. But I digress. Daredevil Born Again is fantastic. A genuinely one of the best comics of Daredevil's career, and one of Frank Miller's best works as well. Daredevil Born Again is a must-read, though, to be honest, I don't know how much the show is going to pull from Born Again, because the last season of the Netflix show is a much more faithful adaptation of Daredevil Born Again, though they remix it a little bit, like Nuke doesn't show up, and I might even dare say they improve some parts of it, because, Nuke isn't in it, and he's not blowing up New York, and the Avengers don't show up, though it would have been pretty awesome to see Chris Evans say, "I'm loyal to nothing except for the dream." That would have been pretty awesome, but, unfortunately, we're not in a perfect world, unfortunately, but I digress once more. Daredevil Born Again is really good, and I dare say it's one of Frank Miller's best works. And I am a bit embarrassed to admit that I have not read the actual Frank Miller run that he did before he did this, but I've read everything else around it. So I've read this, I've read Daredevil, The Man Without Fear, which is kind of Frank's take on Daredevil's origin story. I've read all of that, but I have not read his actual run. So hopefully I will do that at some point in the near future. But Daredevil Born Again is a fantastic read. Highly recommended. Really fantastic comic book storytelling. So, yeah, that's about it. This went really well. So, yeah. Moving on. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Check out Daredevil Born Again. It's a great read. It's a mostly great read, aside from my issues with it. But if you guys want to check me out, you can find me on Twitter. You can also find me on Goodreads and Letterboxd, where I write reviews that are probably more coherent than the one you just heard right now. You can also find me on Instagram and Blue Sky. I don't use Blue Sky very much. But I am slowly starting to use it more. Like, subscribe, comment, tell me what you think of Daredevil Born Again. Have you read it? Or if you've not, what did you think of my review? Did it entice you to read Daredevil Born Again? Let me know down in the comments. I love hearing from you guys. I love the likes and subscribes. And I especially love the comments, because that's why I do what I do. And as my buddy John Minton likes to say, it feels good when you do it. So, yeah. This has been Daredevil Born Again. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Till next time. See you guys later. Bye-bye.